The theater in Dublin buzzed with a warm, excited energy as the audience settled into their seats. Conversations faded when the host, Liam, stepped into the spotlight. With his usual charm, he announced the next contestant, but even he didn't know how unforgettable this performance would be. A small figure slowly walked into view, a thin, shy 14-year-old Filipino boy named Arvin, originally from the crowded streets of Tondo, Manila. He clutched a worn-out second-hand guitar, the wood scratched and faded, one corner held together by old electrical tape. The stage lights reflected off its battered surface, telling a story long before the boy ever spoke a word. As Arvin reached the center of the stage, he hesitated, adjusting the guitar strap and swallowing nervously. One of the judges, Maeve, leaned toward her microphone, a soft expression forming on her face. She whispered to the others, "Look at that guitar, it's been through a lot. This boy must have something heavy on his shoulders." Judge Killian nodded silently, observing the boy with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Arvin lifted the microphone with trembling fingers. "My name is Arvin," he began, his voice barely more than a whisper. "I came from Tondo. I grew up in a small house with my mama and little brother. My mama, she told me to try here. She said maybe Ireland will hear me. I just want to make her proud." His honesty hung in the air like a quiet ache, and even the restless audience fell still. The lights dimmed slowly, bathing the stage in soft blue. Arvin took a deep breath and gently strummed the first chords of Hotel California. The sound was slightly rough, but sincere, each string vibrating with emotion. Then he began to sing. The moment his voice filled the auditorium, something shifted. It wasn't the voice of a boy, it was the voice of someone far older, shaped by hardship and hope. Raw, powerful, aching with truth. Judge Maeve leaned forward, her mouth parting slightly in disbelief. Liam, backstage, froze mid-step. The audience members who had been whispering earlier now stared in silent awe. Arvin's voice rose and fell with perfect control, carrying not just melody but stories, stories of nights without electricity, of dreams whispered through open windows in Tondo, of a boy fighting to be heard. When he reached the chorus, his voice cracked, not with weakness but emotion. Judge Killian's eyes glistened. He wiped a tear quickly, hoping no one noticed. "This kid, this is pure soul," he whispered to himself. Arvin continued, pouring everything inside him into each note. By the time he reached the final guitar strum, the entire theater was on its feet. A thunderous standing ovation erupted, echoing off the walls. Arvin stood frozen on stage, tears gathering in his eyes, overwhelmed by the moment he had only ever dreamed of. The applause was still echoing through the theater when the judges finally regained their voices. Arvin stood in the middle of the stage, clutching his old guitar, his chest rising and falling with deep breaths as he tried to steady himself. The confetti had not yet fallen, but the emotion in the room felt heavier than anything he had ever experienced. The lights softened around him, and the crowd gradually grew quiet again, waiting to hear what the judges would say. Maeve was the first to speak. She tried to begin once, but her voice cracked before a single word came out. She pressed her hand to her chest and took a moment to steady herself, blinking away tears that refused to stay hidden. When she finally managed to talk, her voice trembled with sincerity. "Arvin," she said gently, "you didn't just sing. You opened a door into your soul and let us walk inside. Every note, it felt like you were carrying the weight of your whole life with you." She shook her head in disbelief. "I could hear your story, even without you telling it." Arvin swallowed hard, trying to respond, but Maeve continued, her emotions rising. You sang like someone who has lived through things no child should ever face. I felt your pain. I felt your hope. I felt your bravery. Her eyes filled again, and she laughed softly through her tears. And this is a singing competition, but what you just did? It was more than singing. Beside her, Judge Killian slowly leaned into his microphone. He cleared his throat, but his voice was thick with emotion. I've been sitting at this table for years, he began, his words slow and careful. Years listening to thousands of voices, thousands of dreams, and I've never heard a young lad sing like that. He looked directly into Arvin's eyes. You didn't perform the song, son. You lived it. Arvin's lips trembled as he tried again to speak, but the lump in his throat made it impossible. He covered his mouth with his hand, trying to hold back his tears. The camera zoomed in on his face, tears forming, his chest shaking softly as he breathed. Killian wasn't finished. He leaned back, wiping his eyes openly now. There was a moment, when you hit that high note. I don't know what happened. He pressed a hand to his heart. But something in here just broke. In the best possible way. The audience murmured softly, some wiping their own tears. Even Liam backstage pressed his palm against the wall, overwhelmed. Maeve leaned forward again, her voice a whisper now. You have a gift, Arvin. A gift that was born from hardship but shines brighter than anything we've seen today. You touched every person in this room. Arvin finally managed a small nod, tears rolling freely down his cheeks, his old guitar still clutched to his chest like a lifeline. The entire room could feel it, something special had just happened, something unforgettable, something bigger than a competition. The room had fallen into a deep, breath-holding silence. Arvin stood on the stage, wiping his cheeks with the back of his hand, his small shoulders trembling. The judges exchanged looks, silent, emotional, all clearly moved beyond what they expected when the boy had walked out with his battered guitar. It felt as if time itself had slowed, holding its breath along with everyone in the theater. The air was heavy with anticipation, charged with the kind of energy that only happens right before a life changes forever. Maeve slowly pushed back her chair and stood. The audience gasped, a wave of whispers rolling across the seats like a soft wind. She had tears still clinging to her lashes, glistening under the stage lights. Her steps were slow as she approached the edge of the judges' table, placing both hands firmly on its surface as she leaned forward. Her voice trembled, but she didn't try to hide it anymore. Arvin, she said, breathing out shakily, when you walked on this stage with that broken guitar, I thought you were just another shy young boy. But the moment you sang, you became something much bigger. She paused, a tear slipping down her cheek. You came all the way from Tondo. You came with nothing but hope, courage, and a dream your mother believed in. And today, you touched the heart of every single person in this theater. Arvin shook his head in disbelief, tears continuing to fall. His hands tightened around his guitar, as if he needed to hold on to something familiar before the world swept him away. Maeve's voice grew stronger, but fuller with emotion. You didn't just sing a song. You made us feel your life, your struggles, your dreams, your pain and your hope. And for that, you deserve something extraordinary. Judge Killian rose to his feet beside her, wiping tears openly now. He placed a comforting hand on Maeve's shoulder and nodded, as though giving silent approval. The crowd sensed what was coming, and a collective ripple of excitement rose through the theater. Maeve turned toward the golden buzzer in front of her. She placed her hand over it with a shaky breath, looked back at Arvin one more time, and whispered, "This is for your mother. And for the boy who refused to give up." Then she slammed her hand down. The buzzer exploded to life, bright gold lights bursting across the stage, golden confetti raining down like a shimmering storm. The audience erupted with cheers that shook the entire room. Arvin dropped to his knees instantly, overwhelmed, sobbing into his hands as the confetti covered him. His guitar lay gently across his lap, glowing in the golden light. Killian rushed toward the stage steps, meeting Arvin halfway. He knelt beside him, pulling the boy into a firm, emotional hug. "Your life changes today, lad," he whispered. "You earned every bit of this." The crowd roared, chanting Arvin's name again and again, their voices echoing through the theater as the boy lifted his tear-streaked face into the rain of gold.